want to show you how to take that almost perfect rock and make it a perfect paintable rock, even if it has a couple of flaws or holes. The product I'm going to use is called Apoxie Sculpt, and it's non-toxic, doesn't stink, easy to use, easy to wash up. You can find it on Amazon. It comes in a 2-part formulation. It's a 1-to-1 ratio of each part, so I just form 2 small equal-sized balls, which I then combine and mix thoroughly until they are of a smooth consistency and an even color. This is the natural color. You can also buy this in black and white. I'm going to use a portion of this to apply a thin layer to the top of this rock. That'll cover all the divots and imperfections. A little bit goes a long way. You'll find that it smooths out further than you'd expect. After initially pressing it into place with my fingers, I like to use the lid of my Apoxie Sculpt to smooth it on. It allows me to press harder and apply a different kind of pressure while thinning out the layer that I'm putting on the rock. If any pieces start to crumble off, just use your hands to press them back into place. It's pretty forgiving. Go around the sides, smoothing and pressing to make sure it's adhering, and making sure you have no bubbles or big lumps. I've chosen to just do the front side of this rock because I like the natural texture of it, just not for painting on. You could wrap it all the way around if you chose to. Just a few drops of water will allow your hands to slide more easily over the surface and smooth out any bumps or lumps or holes. You can see that the Apoxie Sculpt whitens and thins a little bit with the addition of water, but as you're working with it, that will start to dry back up. Pay special attention to the edges as you're going around to make sure that they are sticking well and that you've thinned them adequately to blend in with the rock. Like I said before, if you wanted to wrap this all the way around, you could. Your biggest challenge then is to make sure there are no air bubbles or pockets before it cures. You can see that I'm using a little squirt bottle with water in it to apply a few drops at a time. You don't want to flood it, just a drop or two at a time so you don't oversaturate it. If you feel that there's a hole or a thin spot, just use a piece of the remaining clay to patch it. While you're watching me do this intermediate portion of patching and smoothing, I'll say, yes, I know, I have strange thumbs. Nobody needs to leave a comment. I'm quite aware. They do great work for me. I have no problem with them. People like to point them out in the comments on my YouTube, strangely, but I'm aware of my own body, thank you. Once you've done all the patching and smoothing that you need to, apply 1 or 2 last drops of water to allow you to smooth any little last imperfections out. You're going to end up sanding this, but the better you do it this step, the less elbow grease you'll have to put into the sanding. I should mention that I'm working on a silicone mat, which the Apoxie Sculpt won't stick to. It is non-toxic and very easy to wash with water while it's wet, but once it dries, it's like cement. Here's a quick time-lapse of me doing the same process on another rock. I'm sure there are more elegant tools than the lid of my Apoxie Sculpt to use for this process, but I know you'll have it on hand if you've bought it, and I actually find it works really well. Read the instructions on the product for more details, but essentially after you finish smoothing this, you leave it in a warm place to cure for 24 hours. Then, either using hand sanders, or I'll show you in a moment a power sander, you're going to take all the edges and bumps off until you have a smooth surface to paint on. I bought some foam sanding blocks in various grits to do the first couple of these, and it does work. I got a good result, but it's a lot of labor-intensive time. If you decide to use an orbital sander like I did, please make sure you're being super careful. Holding a rock while sanding can be really tricky. A surface where it's laid down is a better idea. After getting the roughest areas taken care of, you can see I switched to a 240 grit sandpaper for a little bit finer polish. You'll see as you do this that the places where there were little dimples or divots will stand out, and you'll need to go back and polish those a little bit more carefully. Go around the edges and make sure it blends with the rock, or if you did it all the way around, and flip it over until you get a nice, smooth, paintable surface. Here's an example of what you can do by improving the surface. This rock was nice and round and I wanted to paint a mandala on it, but the surface was just too rough. I couldn't get the precise lines that I wanted. When I put a layer of black paint on, you can really see how terrible the surface was. But I was able to smooth it out with Apoxie Sculpt, and look at how great it turned out.